signed up who can't make it because this is not the right time, so they plan on watching the recording. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining me today. This is, I don't know, the 10th iteration of this particular conversation. And so keep doing them because people are continuing to be interested. And I'm changing a little bit of the theme next week into dealing with the relationship between breathing and anxiety, since we seem to be winding down a little bit on the coronavirus. So I'm going to mute you all, and if you want to speak, raise your hand or just unmute yourself. And I'm allowing you to unmute yourself so we don't have any background noise, so that the recording comes out a little bit cleaner.
Robert, my friend just came in. Her name is Sharon. What a good friend I am. Sorry, thank you.
That's all right. That's all right. Let me just, yeah, okay. So I'll just double check something to make sure that nobody is trying to get in. All right, we're good. So, all right, I'm going to close that up. So anybody who comes now, it's just a little too late. So I'm going to start. This is going to be a little bit, I'm going to do a slideshow. I'm going to talk a little bit conversationally and also some breathing exercises. And you will get a copy of these slides. I'll send you an email with a link, both on YouTube and in my Google Drive. And I will attach the slides to your email, and also they'll be in the Google Drive, so you can see them and take up the information if you like the more information without having to take notes about it right now. So let me just, I think this is the slides. Hang on a sec. A little technical. Cut that off. Okay. All right, can you all, let me just make sure I'm going to put it up to full size. Can you all see that? Yep. Okay, good. All right. So here we are talking about how to keep ourselves safe. And of course, we're talking about how to keep ourselves safe, both because of the virus and in general, because our breathing is our first line of defense and our first line for our immune system to stay healthy in our interaction with each other, in our interaction with the environment. And that's becoming obviously more of an issue than ever before. So I'm going to provide some conversation about breathing strength, resilience, recovery, and health. And I'm a Pateco practitioner. I've been a Pateco practitioner since 2003, which is I learned from teachers in New Zealand, and Dr. Pateco created that method back in the 80s to dealing with people with breathing disorders. And I've been teaching that for close to 20 years now. Also a certified breathing analyst. So I work with capnometers and being able to measure people's behavioral breath with software information so they can see that. And I'm also a continuum movement teacher. So I am not a medical doctor, so this is not medical advice, this is educational advice, right? So this is susceptibility. You know, we all have probably read a lot about, you know, the different characteristics of why people are compromised in their different parts of their body, and we don't know where the virus is going. It usually attacks people and children where they are weakest. But from my conversation, where I address this conversation, is that air pollution has made people, and water pollution and food pollution, more susceptible than they would be if we had healthy resources to breathe and eat and drink. And the two things that are already in place because of air pollution are inflammatory lung disease and coronary heart disease. And I have a link on this site from an article today that speaks very intelligently to that in the New York Times, published this morning. And clearly, the evidence of where the virus has had its greatest impact has been in places in the beginning that had the most air pollution. And we all know now too, from where we live, that the air is cleaner and that the water is cleaner, and that we're seeing, it's just the irony of the virus cleaning up the major cause of it, our susceptibility in the first place. It's just right in our face that way. And the interesting statistic here, and I use this statistic because it is so profound, is that 91%, this is from the World Health Organization, and they're actually moving it up to 95% of the world's the world's population does not have clean air to breathe. I mean, that's an outstanding number that we don't have clean air. Water is also an outstanding number. And every year, close to 9 million people that are recorded deaths die from air pollution. It's a lot higher than the pandemic every year. So it is a pandemic on its own, and the virus is now just another air pollutant that we're having to deal with. And the interesting thing about it is that 72% of those people die from stroke and heart attack. It affects the heart and the brain more, with more impact than it does the respiratory system. And of those 18% from the respiratory compromise, half of those are lung cancer and the other half are from asthma and COPD and other respiratory diseases. So, a couple of things. One is that the virus at first hit everybody, was about the people who are over 60. And then there were articles written, well, of course it's from over 60. They've been breathing bad air for the longest amount of time. So their lungs are the most compromised and have the most damage to them from the air pollution. And then heart attacks. And it was interesting too, the heart attack rate went down when the air cleaned up, so people weren't coming in. So we only know about 9 million people because they're only recording these two particular things. We don't know what kind of pollutants are attacking people's pancreas or their kidneys or their livers, and they don't really record that. So the statistic is probably a whole lot higher than that. So it is important for us to have a healthy attitude towards breathing. It's really easy, I think, and I think it's very disturbing at the underlying places in our nervous system that we lost our trust in the food, we lost our trust in the water, we went to bottled water, and now the reality of why we are wearing masks is becoming more evident. Is that because we know now it is airborne. It stays in the air for 8 to 14 minutes just from a regular breath. I mean, they're even getting to the point of tracking if somebody's speaking at different volumes, how much of the particle is being distributed at different volumes, and how different letters, the letter A distributes less particles in speaking than the letter E. So they're getting very clear about how this virus is spreading through the air and how much of the particles of the virus you need to be able to not be able to, but that will infect you and cause you to have the disease. So the airborne piece. So it's important for us, at least in my world, to not be frightened by our breathing, that we have to really make friends with our breathing, recognize what the gift that it gives us to keep us alive, and know how to use it in ways that keep us healthy. And that's what this is about today. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the steps in keeping breathing healthy. And the big issue a couple of weeks ago when people came into the hospital was getting them to, and I put the word up there, recruiting more of their lungs to breathe in full capacity. A lot of people, when they're frightened and scared, are breathing up in their chest, and they're in the front of their body, they're looking for air by trying to pull in deeply in the front, and that really doesn't get what was needed. What was needed, and I'll show a picture of it, was the lungs to be filled in the back and way down low. That's where more of the lung tissue is, and we needed to be able to, I think I'm letting somebody else in. We needed to be able to fill the back of the lungs to capacity to keep the air moving, to keep the carbon dioxide moving, and to keep any debris that's building up in the lungs in circulation rather than stagnating in one particular place. So a couple of ways that we can learn how to do that is to make sure, these are just the goals for today, is that we use our nose for breathing. That posture facilitates the ease of movement of the breath in the body and the diaphragm. We'll take a look at the role of the tongue in breathing, and also the role of gravity and levity in breathing, and also some skills on how to reduce airway resistance when you breathe in air, so that you will be able to, when air resistance is lower, you can continue the filling more completely, that when air resistance is, when there's too much air resistance and too much muscle activity in breathing, you sort of are getting into a place where you're reducing the capacity and trying to push against the tightening of the effort of breathing in. So we'll go through those. Thank you. And just stop me anytime for a question. I'm happy. So 3 important things about nose breathing. Yes, Ellen, please unmute yourself, Ellen.
I think you'll get to it. I just was unclear about airway resistance. So
yeah. I will get to that. I will show you that. And we'll practice a way of actually doing that so you can just get a sense of that. So this little quick peek. Yeah, Gigi.
We talked earlier about the dissection anatomy, and in that dissection anatomy that I had in 1968, there was an elderly woman body that was being, and the lungs were looked at. She had not been a smoker, but she'd lived in LA. Even in 1968, her lungs were black.
That's right. That's right. And that was the beginning of the Clean Air Act back in the 60s. So that person had been suffering for many years in the smog. I spent my summers from 1950, my first trip was from 1947 in Los Angeles. My mother was from Los Angeles and my grandparents lived in Los Angeles. So I spent the summers out there with them. And I remember when Disneyland opened in 1955, and my grandparents were talking about, oh my God, look at the smog, look at the smog, look at the smog. You know, they came there in 1909 when it was pristine. So they really saw the development of that smog. So you breathe through your mouth as often as you eat through your nose. It's a silly little thing. Somebody else is coming in. But I'll say it again for the fact that somebody just entered in. You breathe through your mouth as often as you eat through your nose. So the nose is for breathing, the mouth is for eating, period, end of story. The only time you would ever use your mouth for breathing is when you're excited for a few moments, you're laughing, or you're actually running for your life. And you pace your activity level no matter what it is during the day so that you can continue to use your nose for breathing. Your nose is your pacemaker for your activity level. If you find yourself moving so quickly that you have to gasp for breath and grasp for the inhale, you're moving too quickly and you're overriding your nervous system's ability to manage your respiratory system in a healthy way. And we'll look at that too. And it is essential when you're outside, especially now. Anything you breathe in through your mouth goes right directly into the lungs. There's no protection for anything that's in the air when it comes right into the lungs. When it's in your nose, and we'll go through some of these, there's a lot of physiological protections that the nose provides for the lungs. It's the guardian of the lungs. And so this question has come up quite a bit, is what do I do when I exercise? And especially now with masks, what do I do? How do I exercise with a mask on when it gets so hot inside the mask? And the other danger is that carbon dioxide levels will rise from your exhale inside those masks, making you nauseous, dizzy, feel short of breath, lightheaded, and basically feel like you're suffocating and getting headaches. So this woman on our left here, this Sonia Richards-Ross, was learned many things, including the Pateco method, to learn how to exercise. Fastest woman in the world at that particular time, 4 years ago or so, at a quarter mile, 440 meters. And she runs the whole thing with her mouth closed. She's very in tune with the relationship between how the capacity of her breathing and the movement of her body. And so everybody can exercise that way. And this person at the right is obviously a swimmer, which is very difficult to do. Having swam for over 61 years, I know how hard, what that takes to do. But so really, even when you're exercising, if you find your mouth breathing, especially now, just slow your pace down, you will eventually get in more shape through nose breathing in a relatively short period of time, especially with some of the things that I'm going to teach you today. So the major benefits of the nose, this is, these two pictures here are important to me. This one at the top is a live body showing the turbinates, the rounded individual concave bones. These are bones that shape the air as it travels through your nose, and this is the way it shapes it. That's a picture of the air going down into the bronchioles, into the lungs at both sides. It's separating here, you can see it, but the shaping of this was because of this, because of these turbinates, creates turbulence. The value of that, of course, is to put the spirally air through the nose and through the sinuses. So it all goes through the sinuses, picking up the advantages of what happens in the sinuses, which we will talk about. So the nose is the guardian of the lungs. That's my expression for it. That's the way I think about it. And so the nose filters particles of 0.5 microns and above. And the human hair is 50 microns. Unfortunately, viruses are anywhere from 0.1 to 0.3 microns. So the nose will not filter them, but it does prepare the body for the the entry of this particle that may cause some damage. And the nose doesn't filter smoke either, unfortunately. But it does regulate the temperature of the air. So the lungs only like body temperature air. And so when they receive, like you, if you step into a warm bath that feels comfortable to you, there's no contraction or any kind of shock to the system when the body is receiving air that doesn't feel like it's comforting and supporting. Then they have to go into all kinds of physiological shifts to protect the lungs. It regulates the humidity because the mucous membranes in the body, and then mucous membranes in the nose produce enough mucus to humidify or dehumidify if there's too much water in the air. The nose produces antibacterial molecules to kill bacteria before it enters the body. And it produces nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a gas that the nose produces to reduce inflammation. And in 2006, when SARS was around, they did testing on nitric oxide and found that it actually did neutralize that virus. We don't have any idea whether it does the same thing with the coronavirus, but if we can accentuate the ability of our body to produce nitric oxide, I don't see why we won't, and I'll show you how to do that. It reduces anxiety. Mouth breathing triggers the autonomic nervous system to be on alert, and nose breathing triggers it to be rested. And nose breathing promotes the use of the diaphragm. And it gives the body a chance to innovate a response by presenting the invader to our defenses before it enters the lungs. It's my personal opinion, and I have, since I wrote this, starting to see some evidence of that. So what we want to do is we want to avoid any hidden hyperventilation. We're all familiar with hyperventilating when somebody is panting and they're about to pass out because they were over-breathing in a big way, and they wives' tale is to come and give them a paper bag, I don't know, a folk tale, to breathe back their own carbon dioxide to stop the fainting and to stop the hyperventilating. And I'll explain how that works in a minute. So hidden hyperventilation is when we're over-breathing in a particular way without actually looking like it's panting. And that means we're using our mouth for breathing. It's an increase of the usual breathing rate. So our usual breathing rate is anywhere from 12 to 18 breaths per minute, according to the medical profession. Yoga likes 4 to 6 breaths per minute. And coherent breathing, where the breathing is synced up with the rhythm of the heart, is also between 4.5 to 7 breaths per minute. Chest breathing is a hyperventilation. Shallow breathing, quick breathing, gasping, frequent yawning, sighing, and belching are hyperventilations. Yes. Yeah.
I've participated in a lot of methods of breath work to kind of induce a catharsis emotionally.
Right.
A lot of those techniques use mouth breathing to breathe into the depth of the lungs and stretching out the diaphragm and into the upper lungs, and talking about like the sympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve, and going through like an hour-long process.
You're talking about holotropic breathing?
Yeah, and other kinds of methods. And I'm just wondering, I know there's different ways. I like to do that kind of breathing very slowly and not have the intensity of it. And I can still like relieve myself of anxiety and different things in a very slow way, which is my preference. But a lot of people like that very cathartic kind of feeling and the result of that. So I'm just wondering, what are your...
I just know this, that when you breathe out through your mouth repeatedly, you decrease your oxygen distribution from your red blood cells to your regular cells for energy production. It's an instantaneous. Every time you breathe out through your mouth, one breath, you reduce the oxygen flow by 2%. And so the reason people go into altered consciousness is because they're oxygen deprived. So they're in a state of complete starvation. And I have, yoga has 3,000 different breaths. Some of them use the mouth. So I'm not about counterdicting any of the effects of those. I'm looking for how do I take care of myself on the everyday. And so mouth breathing debilitates the flow of oxygen, plain and simple.
Mhm.
Unless you are really exercising strenuously, because then you'd be producing more carbon dioxide. And I'll go over this, but carbon dioxide is the regulator of the distribution of oxygen. So when you're breathing out through your mouth, that's why people go into altered state and oxygen deprivation, because they're decreasing the ability of the body to have oxygen flow to the tissues.
Uh-huh.
And so I think there are other ways to stay connected to one's feelings and emotions and go deeper into the mining of what they're feeling. And that's by continuing to nose breathe. It keeps the cycle of the body in its dimension of being circulating its energy and relaxing the body, so that you can actually feel the emotions rising and identify them more quickly and have them process them. I prefer that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. It comes up often. So here's that next slide. This was discovered in 1885, that over the, I want to get rid of this. Over the supply of oxygen, the carbon dioxide spreads its protective wings. And what that means basically is what I just said. At the simplest way is that carbon dioxide, the conversation goes this way, that the outside atmosphere out here is carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen in a very specific percentage. What we're all concerned about with climate change or climate chaos, or climate extinction, whichever you want to name it, is that the carbon dioxide is rising, and that is causing disturbance. The same is true inside the body. We have the same three gases that come into the inside of us: carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen. They have to be in the proper proportion in the body for the respiratory system and the whole immune system to work properly. When carbon dioxide levels are low, since carbon dioxide facilitates the distribution of oxygen, then oxygen distribution slows, and then the system is in starvation. As a result of being in starvation, there are compromises the body has to go through. One of them is a lack of energy production to run all the other systems. And generally speaking, the system that is the weakest will be the most affected from a lack of oxygen. So this brilliant statement was played out in 1904, and it's now called the Bohr effect. And so it's a scientific principle of respiration, that carbon dioxide, it's a long scientific dynamic, but I simplify it just to say, without too much information about science, it regulates the distribution. So when it's low, oxygen distribution slows down. Once it slows down, like I said, the body is under threat of not getting the nourishment it needs, and that's when the immune system gets overactive. And once it gets overactive, then it's weakened in its ability to deal with things that come into it. And that's when people have allergies and asthma, and things go from there. So this is worth looking up so you can understand more about it online. It's simple, it's there everywhere. So mouth breathing tends to activate the fight and flight response and reduce the flow of oxygen from the blood to the cells, and nose breathing tends to settle it. So we're going to play with that. We're going to see how that works right now. So we're going to track your effort, and whether you're using your belly or chest for breathing, and we're going to track whether your nervous system makes you feel relaxed or anxious when you mouth breathe and when you nose breathe. So what are the two differences? So this little exploration is putting one hand up on your chest so you can feel the movement of air in your chest, and one hand between your bottom of your sternum and your belly button. And so you're going to be breathing through your nose with the best you can, as easily as you can, and you're wanting to notice which hand moves first, the effort of breathing, and what your nervous system feels like right now. Where are you? What state are you in terms of feeling rested in yourself, as opposed to feeling mobilized and maybe a little what we would label as anxious in yourself? And then when you feel like you have a bead on that, then open your mouth and take a few breaths through your mouth, in and out. And then just notice what happens to those three things: nervous system response, whether you're breathing in your chest or in your belly or using your diaphragm, and the effort. And you can, if you don't get it right away, then just go back and forth. Go back to nose breathing, feel into that for a moment, and open your mouth and feel into that. And just notice that it's all going to be at the level of sensation. And when you feel like you have that, let me see your eyes come open, and I will, for those who are on screen anyway. So I'll give the report. You can nod your head one way or the other, or you can raise, unmute yourself. Generally speaking, most people report when they open their mouth to breathe that the breathing moves to the chest. They feel more of their chest being active than their belly, right? And that's a good thing. If you're running for your life, you want to breathe out of your chest, open your mouth, because there are bigger alveoli here. The air moves faster. Not in the long run. Can't get enough air there in the long run. And the nervous system starts to feel a little anxious or a little activated, a little mobilized. Is that also true for some of you? Did you notice that with your? So you can pretty much bet that the normal occurrence is if I have, was standing here and facing my front door and a bear came through it, I would take a huge breath like that. I'd be in fight or flight right away, right? I'd be in fast heart rate. I wouldn't be looking anywhere except at the bear. My digestive system would stop. My breathing rate would increase. My heart rate would increase. And my immune system would immediately get overactive to clean out anything that wasn't useful for it in the moment. Go back to nose breathing. That event is only meant to last 3 to 5 minutes, at least. It's either a day that I eat the bear or the bear eats me. But if I'm activating my nervous system all the time by mouth breathing, then I'm going to stay in that kind of fight or flight all day long. And that's really going to wear out my system. It's going to put me into a lot of distress. And as Hans Selye said back in the 30s, it'll cause me a general adaptation syndrome, which means organ failures along the way, which is what happens from air pollution. Gigi.
I noticed when I went back to nose breathing, I realized my heart had speeded up during the
Yeah, and that's the effect of how the mouth triggers the autonomic nervous system to start to activate the sympathetics and put your body into, we can talk about it as anxiety. We can also talk about it as a mobilization of energy. So we can take off the negativity of anxiety and maybe put on the moniker of mobilization of activity, but that can wear you out over the long run if you continue to do it all day long. So mouth breathing is a habit, or there are habits of it, and I think one of the ways to break that habit is to make a list of when you noticed that you were using your mouth to breathe. And everybody finds 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different moments where they use their mouth for breathing. Typically taking a shower, drinking, eating, talking, watching television is a big one, driving a car is another one. Things that usually cause people to feel anxious anyway, driving a car, watching television because the images travel so quickly, getting ready to go on vacation is another one, and disrupting the routine of the everyday life. And so just make a list and you'll be surprised. So every time you go, wait a minute, that's on my list. I can be more conscious now. I can say, oh, this is the moment that I need to breathe through my nose. 2 of the ones for me, where one was going to the mailbox. I had terror of the mailbox. Don't know. Unexpected, I guess, at that time. It was a long time ago. And after finished driving, when I went to open the car door, I always opened my mouth as I was opening the car door. Strange behavior. I don't do that anymore. I got conscious. I thought, okay, I'm about to open the car door. Close your mouth. Much easier. Hurt myself less. Okay. So that's a good suggestion. So make a list for yourself. So now looking at airway resistance here. How do we minimize the resistance to allow more air in? Well, one of the things we can do to get more air in the back of the lungs, which is where the back of the lungs have more space. And this is something I brought it in because they're doing this in the medical profession right now. And Dr. Pateco talked about this in the 80s, was that you can get more air in the back and limit over breathing by lying on your stomach. And so they found they were just the miraculousness of it in the hospital was amazing when people would come in with very low saturation levels. And they would put them on, normally they would put them on a ventilator and they put them on their stomach and their saturation levels went right up because they were able to recruit those back of the lungs by compressing the front of the lungs. So if you're feeling short of breath, that's a good position to put yourself in if you can tolerate it for a while. They were trying to get people in the hospital to be on their stomachs for at least 8 hours a day. Side sleeping and resting, same potential for increasing the recruitment of the lungs. And no back sleeping for resting or recovering. And if you have to, put your knees up at 45 degrees because now you're compressing the back, so you can't open it as much. And the other is that when you're lie flat on your back with your legs straight out, you reduce your lung function by 40%. And the reason being is because your liver and your belly are pressed up against your diaphragm. But when you lift your legs up, that moves that viscera down towards your pelvis. So let me just show this picture here. So this is the lying down position. You can forget about the movement, or if you're interested in it, you can follow that. But this is what I'm talking about in terms of getting your lung function back. And this is called the horse rider position. So right now I'm sitting on a chair that's shaped like a saddle. So that keeps me in the horse rider position, which is my legs are slightly spread apart. I'm not sitting on my thighs. I'm only sitting on my sit bones. And so I don't have to think about sit up straight. I am up straight. It's an automatic straight up position. And when that happens, then my diaphragm and my belly viscera are not compressed against each other like they would be if I were curled over or sitting back in a chair, perhaps. And you can always tell by the clothes. And so when I'm here, I'm reducing any physical muscle resistance that may be forced to compress because the sitting position is not optimal for making the respiratory system or allowing the respiratory system to move freely. So I'm inviting you to do that and just noticing right off the bat when you use your nose for breathing, if it just doesn't feel a little bit easier. One of the other things about it is that the vertebrae are connected to each other in 3 positions, a body and 2 feet. And so we're doing what the vertebrae are doing by sitting this way, and it aligns the vertebrae so it allows more room in the body for breathing. Nice for those who are trying it, yeah? Okay. So that's one way to help yourself reduce airway resistance when you're feeling breathless, as well as some they're doing in the hospitals, leaning over on a chair, on the back of a chair or a table to open up the back of the lungs as well. And this is an important piece, and not everybody can do this, and you need to do it in a really gentle way, is to have the tongue at the roof of the mouth with the lips and teeth slightly touching. And this opens the whole respiratory tract. So and I'll show you this picture here, and we'll try it together. This is the tongue. This little pink thing is the tongue. And this yellow piece here is the roof of the mouth or the hard palate. Now the roof of the mouth is also the floor of the nose. So they are in relationship to each other. Its teeth are slightly or maybe a millimeter or 2 apart, and the lips are touching. And the point to look at here is this airway space here. It is a drawing, but we see a nice open airway space. And this picture shows the tongue not at the roof, but down over here at the bottom of the teeth. And we want to look at the airway shape here, much smaller in comparison to here. So what happens for children, especially, when their tongue is living at the back of down at the bottom of their mouth and their mouths are open, is the tongue, which is meant to keep the jaw separated and spread for room for teeth, doesn't happen. And so children's teeth get really jammed up and they lose their chin, and there's a sort of a homeliness quality to it, unfortunately, right? So we want to try this. We want to just kind of play like we did with the testing of mouth breathing and nose breathing. Notice here that the tongue is curled all the way back if you can get there. And it's not exactly behind the front teeth. There's the little ridges up there. And so at the first ridge, and if you say the syllable ack, A-C-K, ack, you can feel the back of the tongue lift upwards. So as best you can, without any strain in the jaw, without any strain in the tongue, how much can you keep your tongue up towards the top of your mouth? And when you do that, I want you to register, just like before, the ease of the breathing through the airway, and also the sense of energetic wholeness in yourself. And you may not be able to notice that energetic wholeness until you drop your tongue down to the bottom of your mouth. Check your airway space then. And also notice how connected you feel, both to the experience you're having with me and everybody else at the moment, and where you go inside of yourself. Do you feel like you're as secure and as connected? And then put your tongue back up there. And see how, for me, it feels like an issue of presence. I'm much more present into my reality when my tongue is at the top of my mouth than it is at the bottom. So Babs, you feel that? You're shaking your head in connection, truth of that? Mm-hmm. Gigi too? Anya? Great. So really, I know when I walk around and I go, oh my, I'm in my head, I'm worrying about this, that, and the other thing. Oh, where's my tongue? And I go, oh, that feels better. And the whole thing just sort of disappears. Yeah, Ellen.
So the tongue is supposed to be all the way across the whole roof of the mouth?
Yeah, this is the roof of the mouth, and this is my front teeth. It would be sitting like this. Now, I know. Now, this is the thing. And if I go back to this picture, if you've done this, like this child was doing it until she got to 5 months, 6 years, 5 years and 6 months, and something happened, and she dropped her tongue. So look what it did. It gave her a lot of room for her teeth. She kept her face wide. And then what happened when she dropped the tongue down is the palate rose up, narrowed the face. So if I asked her to put her tongue up there, no way she could get it in between her teeth. So if we haven't done this since childhood, I can't get my tongue up in front of my teeth. I was a mouth breather, but I can get it touching, and I can get the energetic of it lifting, and that's enough. It touches in the front, but energetically, I can feel myself rising up in the back. Yeah, Gigi.
Sharon's asking, you want the whole tongue up against the roof of the mouth?
Yeah, there's a field of work called orofacial myofunction, which teaches people who have not done that all their life how to make that become a reality. So I'm just offering right now the idea of beginning to investigate and inquire, where's my tongue in my mouth? And is it more generally towards the roof of my mouth? And am I keeping my lips sealed? And my teeth generally close together, instead of being like this. This is what happens to a face, because I used to do this to keep my jaw, but this wasn't really effective. So I have my lips closed and my tongue there, but my mouth is open. Not particularly a look I like, and my wife certainly didn't like it. So you look like you're 20 years older than you're supposed to be. But when I take my tongue and put my teeth together, this comes into play. More of that. That's a better look for me, I think. So, and I've been playing with it for a couple of years now. And it is my intention, this is to decide to study this more so I can give more clues about how to do it. But right now, what that feels like for me when I do that is that I can rest this part of my face on my tongue. My tongue offers my face support. And it brings me into this, see, in the Taoist world, in that world, they consider this dynamic, that the earth energy comes up and touches the upper palate, and sky energy comes down to the upper palate, and the tongue marries the connection between earth and sky, or the two forces of gravity's pull down and levity pull up. And it marries those two, and so it brings us into a circular cycle between us, a cycle of renewal in our system constantly. And that's what I feel. So just take it on an advisement and see the best you can and play with it. And you could look up orofacial myofunction online if you want, orofacial myofunction. And it's the practice of teaching people how to use their tongue and teeth and lips properly for maximizing breathing and lowering resistance. Yeah, Gigi.
Do you do this with children? I mean, obviously that
Yes.
girl, that if there'd been an intervention earlier, if people are aware. I have a 6-year-old grandson. I wonder about how you check it out. And
Well, you know, a really good book that just came out is, and I don't remember the name of the author. I mean, it's a woman and a man. She's an orthodontist or a dentist, and he's an environmentalist philosopher. And it's called Jaws. And what she considers, and this is an interesting point, she considers that the open mouth breathing and lack of teeth and misplacement of the tongue, she considers it a pandemic. Because this is what's happened to people's faces. And also what has happened is that, because you can see for yourself, that when the tongue is up there, it opens the airways. And so those who did not do that as children, Gigi, are the ones who, she says, this is her theory, now is why we're seeing such a high incidence of sleep apnea, because it's made this whole airway space much smaller. And that's another thing about sleeping on your back. If you sleep on your back, especially when you're older, the jaw drops back, the palate gets soft, the tongue drops back, and then you have obstructive sleep apnea. So every time they test for sleep apnea, the incidence of apneic events during the night is always much higher on the back than it is on the side of the stomach. So getting off your back is important. So yes, and what she speaks about in that book, Gigi, is, you know, taking a child who is having difficulty with their regulating the dynamic of their mouth and tongue, rather than getting orthodontia work, to the specialists who do this and reforming their mouths when they're younger. It's much harder to do when we're an adult. We're less pliable as adults. Yeah. So yeah, take it on for your grandson and be a good book. It's an easy book to read. All right, so we want to know, a question that comes up is, and these are some more skills you want to get to now, is how to clear your nose if it's stuffed so that you can continue to nose breathe. And it's really, really simple. You breathe in through your nose, you breathe out with clean hands, you pinch your nose, and you bob your head until you feel a slight urge to breathe, so that when you let go, you can gently, without a big suck in, take a gentle breath in. And if you have a heart condition, you would probably only want to do this 6 times. So you don't want to hold your breath too long. So, and if you don't feel like you can do that with your neck, you can get up and walk around the room while you hold your nose, or you can kind of just stamp your feet. So this is good. So let's do this together just one time. For those who want to do it, you take a breath in, take a breath out, pinch your nose, bob your head, keep your mouth closed. Feel a slight urge. Keep your mouth closed, a very gentle breath like you're smelling a rose. And it clears up the nose. It does. So Linda is agreeing. She says it clears up the nose. So thank you.
do it one more time. It took me a while to get the people picture back up.
Okay. So you're just breathing in, breathing out, pinching your nose, bobbing your head until you feel a slight urge to breathe. If you don't have a heart condition, if you do, 6 breaths. 6 seconds, and then breathe like you're smelling a rose. It works. And repeat it as often as you need to get your nose up unclogged when it's stuffed. Great little exercise. And just remember, your one nostril is more dominant than the other, and it changes every 20 to 90 minutes. So sometimes it feels stuffy when it's not. And certainly don't test stuffiness by going, because once you do that, you pull your nose together, and of course it's going to have no airway to go through. All right, so talking is one of the biggest places that people give it away. And so no doubt about it, when we're speaking, we are exhaling. That's what makes sound. But when we finish, if we go back to the earlier caveat that we pace our activity level so that we can always use our nose for breathing. When I run out of voice, I close my mouth and breathe back through my nose so I don't trigger my autonomic nervous system, so I can stay quiet in myself. Give a break to the listener so they don't have to hear my words over and over and over again. And I take a moment for myself to breathe and feel my breathing and be with myself for a moment. Good way to practice this is reading aloud. And for the women on the line, it also means practicing telling people when you're not finished talking when they interrupt, because that's what most of the women tell me. If I take a pause to breathe, I'm going to get interrupted. So I'm thankful to my wife for having taught me to shut my mouth until she's finished talking. All right, so I'm going to keep
Ask a
practicing.
question.
Yes, who?
When we were doing the exercise of holding our breath and then breathing in, I felt breathing through my nose, unlike the other exercise that we did. I think I'm generally like a belly breather. So that first breath of smelling that rose, it went to my upper lungs first, which is not usually how I breathe.
Great.
So I'm just wondering, and maybe we'll get to that today through the other lessons that we'll do, but is there a particular order of upper lung to lower lung that you would say?
No, it's a matter of, yeah, sorry. See, there I go interrupting.
I'm going to talk on top of you.
Oh, thanks. Sandra Kahn and Paul Ehrlich, the writers for that. Thank you, Alan. He put it up in the chat that the author of the book Jaws is Sandra Kahn and Paul Ehrlich. So that's oops, I just lost you all. So that's a really good point, Anya. It's like you're a belly breather. So as long as you don't hold your nose to the point where you feel like you need a really big breath because you're starving for air, when you let go, be conscious and use your belly for breathing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of, oh, I've got a habit now. I just jumped to my chest. Oh, wait a minute. Let's not do that. Because you're not stressed. You know, the only way you would jump to your chest as a survival mechanism is if you held too long and you're grasping for air or you're gasping for air. But if you're just still in your comfort zone, just take a moment to make sure you settle down and continue your belly breathing.
Oh, because I've just heard so many different contradicting kind of opinions around, like, you should belly breathe, you shouldn't belly breathe, you should, you know.
It's not about belly breathing. It's about using your diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you use your diaphragm for breathing, your belly is going to extend if you can allow it to do that by not holding tension in it, because the diaphragm is moving. So think about it this way. We are a finite shape and container. When the lungs are filling, everything is moving. Everything is meant to move. It has to be pushed out of the way. So the lower belly is where the movement's going to be most predominantly. If we're not holding our lower belly tight, the diaphragm's going to move. And all the viscera and the pelvis is going to drop, and all the viscera is going to spread a little bit so the belly feels like it swells. Not using your belly, not making extra effort in your belly to push it out, but just letting the natural movement of the diaphragm expend the cavity below the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the major breathing muscle. We want to use the diaphragm. When the diaphragm is in use, the diaphragm is attached to the lungs and the heart. It pulls the lungs open to allow the air to arrive. And once the diaphragm starts to descend, then the ribs on the side open up to pull the lungs to the side to make more movement in the lateral of the lungs. And then the last step would be the front to back. If you're taking a really big breath, where the front to back will expand and create more volume there. So it's about the diaphragm.
I don't want to take up too much time, but just for clarification, if I'm seemingly a belly breather, but I feel like I'm frozen in my chest, in learning what I'm trying to understand from what you're saying, it's good to be a belly breather. But if I've been kind of frozen here,
right,
I breathe in my belly, is it then good through these exercises to also bring some more breath up high in addition with what the belly seems naturally to do?
It's a great question. It depends on the volume you're needing at the moment. If you
Okay.
need more volume, then you need to have the chest moving. But I will do an exercise with you that would allow you to feel your chest filling with air.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So there are the lungs, just to show the size of them. So people don't have an experience of the size of the lungs. As a person's arms are up, but still the diaphragms are above the lungs are above the clavicle. They fill all the way up into here. And in the front, they go down to the front of the ribs. And if you go all the way around your ribs and you feel the ribs in the back, that's where the larger part of the lung is. As you can see, they would be bigger in the back. And this is a picture of the back. This is the space they have the potential to open up into.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really open those up back there. Okay. So here's the way, yeah, you're right on target here. Here's a way to reduce the airway resistance. This is a little fabulous little 5,000-year-old trick, if you will. So when you're breathing in, the purpose of this exercise is both to reduce the airway resistance, to increase the capacity, your lung capacity, and to put the lungs in charge of your breathing instead of you in charge of your breathing. You want to take your willfulness of taking air in out of this issue and have your body breathe. So when you're breathing in, no sound, you are thinking, because when you're thinking, you'll hear it, the syllable sa, S-A. And when you breathe out, you're thinking the syllable ha. So what you want to notice, you want to just take a couple of breaths where you breathe, where you feel you're putting the effort into breathing, and feel your lungs. The bigger breath you take in, you can feel yourself tighten in your chest, and then say sa, or think sa on your way in. And notice that there's no constriction in your chest, hopefully. And also notice that the air feels like it flows through, it's being pulled through your nose without you trying to get air in. And on ha, on the way out, you're not efforting at all. There's no activity in your nose or your lungs to breathe out. It's a little more difficult, but you're letting the lungs' elasticity squeeze the air out and the diaphragm coming back up into the lungs to push the air out. So what you can feel, hopefully what I feel, is not so much me trying to expand my chest, but I can feel the lungs inside of my chest opening. Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go, Anya. Yeah, that did it for you, right? So let me just say this, Gigi, in a minute. So if I wanted to increase my capacity, which in other words, to fill my lungs more fully, because that's the thing I'm wanting to do if I'm not well to recruit, I just need to think sa in a little more elongated and keep filling until I'm really full. And so I can feel them really just expanding without any contradictory tension in my chest. If I went like this to try to fill them, everything gets tight and my shoulders raised. But with sa, it's like the balloon of them in the back. And if you put your awareness in the back of your body, breath follows awareness, you'll feel your back body opening up. And put it down low and you'll feel them opening up down low. And the ease of letting the breath out without any effort, it's just like they're descending down. The breath is leaving and your body is just descending as it gets less light because the air is leaving. And then when you're breathing in, you're getting that lift. And then when you breathe out, you're descending down into the support of gravity, into your seat. You're being held and you can rest in your exhale and being supported by gravity. Do more of that in a minute too. So Gigi, I'm answering your question now.
I felt lightheaded afterwards.
No.
When I first did it, I kept doing it.
No, okay, so let me just say this. Thank you for that. One of two things could be happening. A little over breathing or a little bit of oxygen high. So just slow down the thinking. Or shorten the thinking. Just think stop for only 2 seconds, because that's a normal inhale anyway. But the thing I'm trying to get at, and I don't think it's in the next slide. Yeah, the thing I'm trying to get at here is that everybody, this is a psychological, emotional piece. We all know that when we are talking to somebody who cares about us, and they offer us support, they hear us and they're supporting us in our feelings and who we are, they see us clearly, we open, do we not? It's a level of intimacy that allows us to open. It's like, oh, I feel supported, I feel seen, I feel loved. I let myself be more vulnerable and share more of my intimate self with somebody. So where is their support always available? Well, the earth holds me. And so when I'm exhaling and I'm losing my buoyancy from the air, but I'm gaining a sense of my own weightedness. And I'm allowing that sense of my weightedness to land on whatever supports me, the chair, the floor, my hands on my thighs. And then for a moment, I just think, whoa, I don't need to do any effort. I'm rested on that support. And then my inhale, I keep my awareness of my support, that I'm supported. I keep that in my awareness, and I take my inhale. And I notice that my inhale rises from a rested place. I'm not now active in the inhaling, I'm just rising from a rested place. So wherever I, and this is a cumulative and a progressive state, that every time I exhale, I can see where else in my body I can allow myself to surrender, if you will, to more support, less holding. And keeping down, there you go, Gigi, you can see it's in your shoulders. So letting your shoulders just naturally move towards the earth. And then when I breathe in, leave them in that downward position. And then the next breath, I think, whoa, wait a minute, something else just let go. I allowed myself to be held just a little bit more somewhere else. And then I keep that in my awareness. And I breathe in, and I just notice I'm starting to open a little bit more. My belly is getting a little softer. You can feel my heart rate a little bit more. And so as I practice this over and over again, usually the same places in me need to let go of their tension. That how I carry my tension becomes an obvious pattern to me. So I can just go right to how my shoulders doing, how my belly doing. Am I letting my thighs relax to receive the support of the floor? Do I feel my feet on the floor? And so eventually what it starts to feel like is my chi is flowing, my energy begins to flow. And so the more my energy flows and the less I hold, the smaller my breaths are. I don't need to take as much in. I'm not feeding attention now, I'm feeding rest. And in rest, I need less. But I can take in more, if I need it.
Robert, this is Suzanne over here.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi. Boy, this is really profound stuff.
I know. Thank
This
you.
is really profound. I'm just really getting a lot out of this.
Good. Thank you for speaking into that.
Sure.
And it's, and this goes to any position. You're lying down on your side. How can I do on the exhale? Let my buoyancy go so I feel more of myself being held. I have a bigger area of my body being held, so therefore more of me is being held. I mean, I know this for myself, and somebody report, even when I'm sleeping, I'm holding myself away from relaxing. And so, just constantly, and the further exploration, which we don't have time for today, but I will maybe in other classes that I'm going to give, is that the tongue supports my head. My lungs support my shoulders. So inside of me, there are levels of support that I rest all my tissues on, everything else inside of myself. So I'm learning how to rest. What does rest really mean? I don't hold on. I give way, like a dog or a cat, right? Those of you who have pets, or babies, if you had babies, you didn't know if they were breathing or not, because they're so rested. They need so little energy. But when we're tense, we need energy to keep the tension going. And when we need energy to keep the tension going, we need to breathe more to get more of the oxygen to supply the tension. So the more we rest, the easier our breath is. And the easier our breath is, the healthier we stay. That's the principle of Buteyko, to stop the overbreathing. So any way that we're tense, we're holding our breath. You may not feel like you're holding your breath because your breath is moving, but if you're holding yourself in tension, you're holding the space that breath can be breathed into small, and that means you're holding its capacity to nourish. So this is a great exercise to do. I recommend doing this 60 minutes a day, 5 minutes at a time throughout the day. So you constantly interrupt the patterns of habits that you go back to the way you normally live your everyday life, and let your everyday life run based on your capacity to breathe quietly and easily. So Suzanne, if you would mute again so we don't hear the background noise, appreciate it.
Of course. Sorry about
That's all right. Nose breathing produces nitric oxide. So what they discovered was in 2006, if you breathe for 20 minutes, hum for 20 minutes throughout the day, it may not be all at one time, you increase the nitric oxide production up to 15 times normal. And like I said earlier, it helps with antiviral, and also definitely we know helps with reducing inflammation and oxygen distribution. The antiviral thing was true in 2006. We don't know if it's true now. But hey, if I can get more of the good stuff in my body just by humming, why not? And plenty of times when you're walking around and you could just be humming instead of just doing nothing, right? Any kind of humming will work. All right, take that under advisement. All right, this is a good exercise to do if you find yourself caught for a moment, mouth breathing, dissipated a little bit, coughing, yawning, sneezing, or sighing, or needing to clear nighttime stuffiness before you go to bed. And we'll go to the bottom one in a minute. It's really simple. If you yawn, you give off carbon dioxide. If you sneeze, you gave off carbon dioxide. So you want to just breathe in, breathe out, and hold your breath for 3 to 5 seconds. And then breathe again. All of these things that I've identified here are energies that move upward into your chest: coughing, sneezing, yawning. So if you're coughing and sneezing a lot throughout the day, guess what? You're going to be caught in chest breathing. So you want to remind your body, no. All right, we coughed, we breathed. Let's come back to the down place to breathe from. So by holding your breath for 3 to 5 seconds, you've increased your carbon dioxide levels again that you've dissipated from those other things. And it helps me return back to my diaphragmatic breathing. And if you're starting to feel not well, David's trying it. Thank you, David. And if you aren't feeling well, then this has been really useful for a lot of my clients, for myself included, is to do 100 of them in an hour and do them 3 times a day. How do you do 100 in an hour? You can do one of 2 things. You can take toothpicks, matchsticks, get 100 of them. Every time you do one, move it from one side to the next until you're done. Or, I don't like to count, I do one every 3rd breath, and then I get them done in an hour. And this really is boosting your immune system. It's putting a lot more oxygen into your body, really making sure you have enough carbon dioxide. That increase in the oxygen really supports the functioning of the immune system. It can help your body eliminate an encroaching virus, perhaps influenza, cold, and give your immune system a better chance to, like I said, to mount its effectiveness. So Jenny, I haven't talked about this before, but any of you ever read Susan Sontag's treatise on the language of medicine and the language of illness? She wrote a paper, God, it's been a long time ago, 20 or 30 years ago, about how medicine in the medical world uses military metaphors to talking about disease. We got to fight this disease. We got to attack this disease. We got to defend against this disease. They're all military metaphors. So I do my best to try to find another way to speak about how we are engaging ourselves to work with our bodies to help keep them healthy. So it's a very, like I said, military, and it puts too much force into the whole thing as far as I'm concerned. Okay, a little political commentary. So like I said, practice this for 60 minutes a day in 5-minute increments. It's really good to interrupt breathing habits that don't serve our health. So by doing it for 5 to 10 minutes at a time throughout the day, you go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wow, that's good. I'm back to being in touch with my breathing. I'm back to being in touch with the process. I'm relaxing a little bit more. I'm re-regulating my breathing so that the next part of my event of the day goes through, I'm breathing well for that. I'm not carrying forward an activated breathing pattern for the next thing that I do, especially important after exercise. to break the exercise pattern back to a normal pattern. Gigi, did I say something funny, or did your friend Sharon say
Yes,
something funny?
I almost mentioned it earlier. I began taping my mouth at night more than a year ago with a paper tape, and I'm so
Right.
excited to see it at the bottom of the list. And I also can show, you know, your course that I took from you, how many years ago was it? Here's my nose clearing notes that I keep in the bathroom. And not that I've used it recently, but it's you're really touching back on many things that I learned that, but I haven't kept up the practice well enough. But I've really never lost the basic things you taught us about that one molecule of oxygen to go through the capillary wall requires 4 carbon dioxide molecules. And
Wow, I've forgotten that.
yeah, and the but I still need help with it. So I'm thinking that I probably need to do a consult with you. Part of the mold support, I have a genetic condition where, and I didn't know this when I saw you, my health was always affected by mold. I can't create antigens to get it out. And I have to detox other ways. And so I get muscle cramps, and trying to breathe in that way to get more oxygen across the capillaries, I need some more help with.
Okay, get in touch. We'll do a session. So this is what she's speaking to. This is paper tape. This is 1/2 inch. Mostly you get a 3/4 inch or an inch in the store. This is from, it's from Amazon at 39 cents a roll. In the store, it's $5 a roll. So you choose. Basically, this is how this works. You tear a piece off. This stops you from mouth breathing at night. You know you mouth breathe at night when you are dry mouthed in the morning. You can take a smaller piece, start with a small piece, and just use it here. You can graduate to a piece here, and then a piece here and here. But really what you're after is after you've taken a piece and you've bent over a part that's not sticky, and you have clean hands and you take off some of the stickiness so you don't have too much on your mouth, you want to wear it like this.
That's how I wear it.
Where? Cross.
Mine's 1 inch.
Both lips.
And then when you take it off in the morning, you take it off really gently or push it out with your tongue. I'm going to mute you, Gigi. I got it. And if it feels, scary, or you go better with it at night and it feels like I'm not comfortable, try it during the day, reading a book, working at your computer. Just get a feel for what it feels like. And, when I teach the class, I do say that it takes about 6 months to train people to not breathe through their mouth at night. And I have been taping for 17 years, so I'm a slow learner. But no, I can do it, but I don't really, I kind of like it. It just takes the whole thing out of the equation and breathe more soundly. Some people have stopped their snoring. Some people have stopped their sleep apnea. Not always the case, but does stop the wet, dry mouth in the morning. You don't want that tongue like you can't even move it in the morning. If mouth breathe all night long. And besides, if we go back to the discussion about mouth breathing triggers fight or flight, then you're sleeping in an agitated state all night long. Okay, so I'm kind of offering some other ideas here. Present moment awareness is a sensual experience. In other words, you're living reality through your senses, not through your mental capacity. So sometimes you get a little lost and you're not quite sure what to do. I picked this up on the internet. I've been practicing. I really like it. 5 things in your visual experience, 4 sounds in the field, 3 touches, including the internal touch of breath, 2 smells, and 1 taste. Just go through the list and go, whoa, here I am. I'm not so much in here anymore. I'm actually in my senses. I'm in my first order of my nervous system, which is my present moment reality. And I'm in my senses, and that's my sensual nature, my sensorium, which is a lot more pleasurable than running through things in my mind over and over and over again, which I have a tendency to do. Okay, here's a couple other things to do. This one is called the anti-hyperventilation exercise. Let's say you can't get, thank you, Linda. I have been using this forever. I had this written out, and Linda so generously designed a little layout for me. So, what, 20 years ago, Linda? I don't even know. It's been a long time. Thank you, Linda. So this is really good for both asthma and anxiety, and I'm gonna do this with you so you can get a sense of it. So remember, when we do this, you're already pretty relaxed. So, but if you were really like, I can't catch my breath, I can't get a hold of my breath, I can't stop myself from breathing too fast. I'm trying to sit down and meditate. I'm breathing too quickly. I wake up in the middle of the night. I can't get my breath under control. This exercise is designed in its pauses to build carbon dioxide. And so what's it doing? It's releasing oxygen, which is going to help settle the nervous system. Carbon dioxide is also a vaso and bronchial dilator. It means it opens the airways. So if you were asthmatic, you would go further up to a pause of 10. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this. It's 81 seconds, just to give you a feel for it. I'm getting my stopwatch out. And so I'm going to say breathe in, out, and suspend. And I will count the number of seconds you're suspending. And then breathe in, breathe out. We'll go through it all the way to 6 and then back. It's all because we're just using it to keep yourself calm. This is like a continuation of many, many pauses in a row. All right, ready? Okay. Take a breath in, out, and suspend. 1, 2, in, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3, in, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3, 4. In with sa, out with ha, suspend. 1, 2, 3, 4. I lost track. In, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3, 4. In, out, suspend. 1, 2, 3. In, out, suspend. 1, 2, in, out. Sorry, I lost track there. Not repeated some. Was that good? Yeah, and you liked it? Quieted you down? It's good. Gets you back inside of yourself, and especially useful. Thank you, Alan. Especially useful if you're really in a. I have stopped people's panic attacks in 81 seconds. I mean, it's really useful to get everything slowed down. So take it on, and if, like I said, I've used it for. I'm an asthmatic. I've used it sometimes when I haven't had an inhaler around, and needed to open my airways. Very strenuous on the way up. You feel like you're going to die if you're an asthmatic, but as soon as you start coming back, those airways start to open up. You go, oh, it's great, quite a good relief. So this was designed both for what yourself and across, because if you run across anybody who's having a difficult time and you want to help them, like I just did you, I can just say to you, just follow my instructions. Here you go. They don't have to think, they just follow the instructions. Okay. Here's another one. This is one for strengthening the diaphragm. Some of you may know Carl Stow. He was a breathing teacher, but actually he was a choir director in New York City. And he would teach amateurs how to breathe, and then he would teach them how to sing. And so one of the ways that he was got famous for helping Navy sailors and sailors in World War II who came out of ships with emphysema from so much asbestos. He helped them recover by strengthening the diaphragm. And he also I tell this lineage, he has a lineage of helping Obama become president and the liberation of having a black president. Because he went to the 1968 Olympics as a breathing coach, and he trained the track team, and the first and third places went to black runners who used his method to win the race. And of course, those are the ones who put their hand up for Black Panthers. So that's the lineage, actually, of how breath actually had an impact into that cultural phenomenon. So he basically did it this way. Besides massage, which was always about relaxing the body, was take a breath in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so what it's doing is forcing more air out, and how the only way to get more air out of the lungs is to push that diaphragm up into the lungs. So that's the way he exercised the diaphragm to make it stronger. It is a muscle. He was the first person actually to do video X-rays of the movement of the lungs and breathing. And with his emphysema patients, he saw holes in their diaphragm. The weakening of the diaphragm had holes in it. And so doing these exercises built the muscle tissue back up so it was strong enough to have them breathe properly. Very successful with emphysema patients. Ellen.
You do it out loud?
Yeah.
Counting out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I did it louder for you. I don't have to do it that loud generally. And then what he did was he taught people how to sing by using the diaphragm. And so he would put concerts on in Carnegie Hall in New York with amateur singers. So remedies for a headache, this is out of Buteyko. And I did want to speak to that, Gigi. Yeah, the thing that I really have enjoyed as a consequence of the virus is noticing, I've been saying the things that they're saying in the medical profession of what to do about breathing. I've been saying this since 2003. And so Buteyko was really brilliant. He really had it down. So often overbreathing dissipates the minerals in the body. And so taking some quarter to a teaspoon of sea salt, not iodized salt, in a cup of hot water is a tea. Medicine 2-3 times a day, that really helps the breathing chemistry and the mineral content. You got to use sea salt though, but I don't know where you're going to get clean salt these days without plastic in it, but that's another conversation altogether.
Redmond has sea salt that doesn't have any plastic in it.
Who does?
Redmond in Utah.
Oh, the people who make flour stuff and things?
Yeah, they have other products, toothpaste and many type.
Oh, good, thank you. How do they get the plastic out, do you know?
Because it's mined inland. It never.
Oh, in Utah, the salt mines in Utah?
Yeah, it was never had sea water
Or
since
air.
plastics have developed.
Or air.
Well, that I can't speak to.
Air is filled with microplastics. You want to have, just for a downer, we eat a credit card's worth of microplastic a week in weight. And we breathe in, we don't even know how much we breathe in. Yes, we do actually. The University of Wisconsin did, it was 989 microfilaments a day. Don't buy fleece. It puts 1,800 microfilaments of plastic every time you wash it into the water supply. Recycle plastic. We've got a lot to learn yet about plastic and its effect on us in the world. Okay, nasal wash, you're outside and it's polluted, or you want to clean, or same with the virus, you want to wash your nose out, get those particles out. Even if you just have to take your hands and throw some water up in your face, just rinse your nose out, get it clean. In Delhi, where some of the worst air population in the world is right now, people are wearing nose filters. And what they look like after an hour. Yeah.
The name of those nose filters are Woody Nose, Knows, and but I wanted the nasal wash. One way is blocked and the other way is clear, and if I try to get that blocked one, it pushes it up and I get into trouble.
Yeah, you can't do it. It doesn't work for a blocked nose.
Yeah, so apparently I have a deceptive septum or something. So.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
But my question was going to be: is it worthwhile to do it on the side that can do it?
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, it's supposed to go through, but yeah, sure. Or use your hands.
Can I ask a question, Suzanne here?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the Navage machine?
I had somebody on here. I can't remember what she was, a naturopath or maybe an orofacial myotherapist. No, it was an osteopath. Too much power. Too much. You don't need that much. You don't need that much force to do it. That was her take. that it disrupted rhythms and membranes to do a lavage. Because that's got a power behind it, right, Suzanne?
Yes, it does actually.
Yeah, that was the taken that. It didn't need that much power.
Mm. It puts it up one side and sucks it out the other side.
Yeah, well, so does a neti pot.
Yeah,
And that's controlled, you control the flow.
yeah. And I've been putting in 2 or 3 drops of povidone iodine
Yes.
to kill whatever,
People are doing that for sure.
which is also antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, and mucolytic. So I thought that that would help.
Yeah, probably so. I've heard that before too.
Yeah.
What did you call the iodine?
Povidone iodine.
Spell it.
It's Povidone. It's the same as betadine,
Oh, okay.
and it's different than Lugol solution, which is also an iodine. But Lugols you can take internally, povidone not.
Okay, great. Yeah, and also somebody was online. I don't promote anything particular, but they did talk about Pronaris, which was what the astronauts used to keep their noses clean when they were up in space. All right, a couple more things before we finish here. Shortness of breath. A lot of shortness of breath going around right now. And some of that has to do with the fact that carbon dioxide levels build up because the body is overactive in producing too much carbon dioxide, and it actually can't get released out of the lungs. And so it makes people feel like they're starving for air, and so they begin shortness of breath. There was a vet who wrote a paper about that what he sees in COVID was what he sees in pets, that the internal endogenous production of carbon monoxide got way too high and produced the kinds of effects that he's seeing in COVID. Whether that's true or not, I haven't had any more, heard more of that. And of course, anger, grief, and despair will cause you to gasp for air. And breath is signaling an underlying cause and maybe trying to regain its balance. So, you know, it's a warning system. Breath is sending up a warning system when it's short of breath. Some adjustment is needed because it's really expressing what's going on internally as a physiological phenomenon. And so that's why you want to have one of these babies. Everybody should have one of these, pulse oximeter. Because what's happening for people is that's the warning. They're going along fine. They're actually not getting enough oxygen, but it's still reading, it's healthy, and then all of a sudden it reaches the critical mass and then the whole thing shuts down. And as soon as you see that number drop below 90 into the 80s, that's when you go to the hospital. So it's like knowing your temperature. When your temperature rises, when your pulse oximeter levels drop down, there's no question you need to be in the hospital. And there's a link on how to use one. And, you know, I'm changing the topic of the conversation, or maybe I'll do 2. It's a possibility. I'm really concerned about breathing and anxiety. I have a videotape on my YouTube channel, Into the Breathable Body. And this is going to be the 4th wave, and they're really starting to write about it now. It's the mental illness, psychological trauma, economic injury, and burnout from being home and not being able to take care of your life. And so I'm going to see a lot more of the effects of the virus at this level here. So just be tuned to that reality for yourself and people around you. And you know, this is from a talk that I did up here, because the Northwest can be incredibly inundated with smoke. And so hopefully people on Vashon had N95 masks. I did. I had a couple dozen of them here because of being aware of the smoke coming, because they're only good for 2 hours at a time. And air filters are important, 4 or 5 stages. HEPA filters, they are talking about them, that they will go down to 0.3 microns, and 0.1 microns is the size of the virus. But even if they don't kill the virus, they do circulate the air, and that's what you want. You want that air circulated. Stagnant air is not what you want in a household. And if there were fires outside, I'm just putting this in there, there's no cooking inside. It increases. This is for people who are really susceptible to bad air. And so air filtration, good article here on how they work with Consumer Reports. But also I monitor the air I have this monitor here, so I can tell what the carbon dioxide levels are in the house, because if they go over the norm outside, when they reach, they're usually at 440 parts per million. When it goes to 1,000, you lose 15% of your cognitive function. When they go to 2,000, you lose 21%. And sleeping in a bedroom with the windows closed for 1 or 2 people, or an office with the windows closed without filtration, those carbon dioxide levels climb really fast. Even if you're driving a car with your windows closed and you're driving, it can go up to 4,000 parts per million, the carbon dioxide with passengers in the car with the windows closed. Very groggy, make you nauseous, make you sick, make you groggy. I also have this one here. I have this top, I have this top one in my house, and I have this one, which actually here tests for formaldehydes and tests for VOCs, volatile organic compounds. It also tests the air quality. It doesn't test carbon dioxide. So I'm a little bad boy in town. I go around testing all the air quality in all of the stores and restaurants, and then telling them if their air is crap and they need to hire me as a consultant. But it's true. I went to the supermarket the other day. The formaldehydes were off the chart, and so was the were the volatile chemicals. So. You know, that's not a big deal, I guess, if you're just in and out, but a severe asthmatic walk into a store like that, they would have an asthma attack right away. So worthwhile noticing, and this is for radon if you're worried about radon in your house. But it's good to monitor. This one's $100, and this one is $300, and this one's $200. This one will do the same thing that one does. And they've both been well tested and well recommended. So that's why I put those two up there. You'll get this in the slideshow as well. And so, you know, as Gigi said, I am a Buteyko educator, and so I do private work. I take people through a series of 5 sessions to teach the whole Buteyko method if needed, and I do individual sessions as well. And you will receive in the notes 28 reasons to nose breathe. That'll be in your list, and some resources, some movement resources, and some other resources, and some interesting things about the corona, about nitric oxide, and some other conversations. So that's what's available in the slideshow. So I'm going to stop that right now, so we can have time for some questions. It's getting close to the end, but I think I gave you a fair amount of useful information. Any thoughts, questions? We can.
I have a question, Suzanne here.
Sure, Suzanne.
After having done a variety of different types of yoga for many years, I just recently started studying Kundalini yoga. And there's a great deal of breath of fire. That's an integral part of that practice. What is your opinion of breath of fire?
Well, you're also doing a lot of movement with Kundalini yoga.
Yeah.
So it kind of balances it. Again, my scope of practice is about how to take care of your breathing and your health for everyday life. So, you know, the Wim Hof method does a lot of hyperventilating. People really love the Wim Hof method. Yoga does mouth breathing. I trust that they, use the breath of fire for a very particular reason, to activate. And so that's what the breath of fire does. It activates. And that's what mouth breathing does. So if you're looking to activate the system in a very particular way, it's probably very useful. Just like holotropic breath work is good for putting you in an altered state of consciousness, but it is oxygen deprivation. You wouldn't walk around all day long doing holotropic breathing. So
right, yeah, I've done that also. Found it very useful.
Sure, yeah, well, good. All those things serve the purpose that they're stated on. And again, mine is for health and well-being and for maintaining a sense of ease and calm, and knowing how to take care of your breathing, and understanding how breathing works, so that you're educated and motivated to make sure.
Well, I just want to tell you how grateful I am for this information. I had never had respiratory issues, and was exposed to toxic mold in my apartment, which I lived with for quite some time before I realized the nature of the problem that left me with bronchiectasis and asthma. And so, this is very helpful information.
Well, I'm going to promote myself. I'm working with a person with bronchiectasis right now, and have worked with many others before that. So I have good information. Learning the method of Buteyko to manage some of those things is really valuable, as Gigi talked about.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I'll be in touch.
Okay, good. And Ellen, did you have a question?
I'm aware of the meter that measures the oxygen.
The pulse oximeter
Yeah.
on your finger?
Because I've seen that there's many.
That's right.
Somebody else recommended. Do you?
No, I don't. I just go on Amazon and see what's available because they're really selling out. You know, originally when I bought mine 20 years ago, you couldn't get them for under $300. So now they're they're more accurate the more you spend. But the one I bought here now is $20. So, and I don't like it on my finger here. It doesn't read accurate, so I put it on this finger. But pretty much you'll be within range with any of them. Alan.
Oh yeah, real quick. Thank you. Great class. Thanks for doing all that you're doing.
Sure, thanks, Alan.
The air filters. Do you have one that you like?
I just bought, I've been told not to recommend because it's scope of practice, but I just bought an $89 Levoit, Levoit, on Amazon. It got really good reviews. People have used it. So I bought that as an extra one. And I have two molecules, MOLKUEL, and they're $800 each. And they're very effective. And I bought those because of the California fires, and people who had bought them there said it really helped during the fires. So I bought two of those. So and then I bought the $89 one. What I watch out for, Alan, is I have to watch out. I want them to have two things especially. They can have as many stages as you want, but they want to have two things. One is they want to have a HEPA filter, and they want to have a charcoal filter. Because charcoal filter will do smoke and odors, where a HEPA filter won't do those kinds of things. You can buy ones that do ultraviolet light that maybe kill bacteria. What you have to watch out for is how much ozone is being produced, because ozone can cause asthma and trouble for asthmatics. The other thing is you really want to, do two things. You want to see the CAD rating, the capacity for how many air changes you get in your size of the room on running for an hour. So you want as many air changes as you can. So it has to be effective for the size of the room that you want it in. And then it also shows on the box usually the decibel level of what it means to run it on high, because the ratings are always on high.
Yeah.
And so you want to watch the decibel rating. But that's what I pay attention to, 4 or 5 stages, so that the air is really going through a lot of circulation. And making sure you replace the filters when you're supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Alan. Did I hear another voice wanting to ask a question? Okay, then. Well, this has been useful for me too. I've enjoyed teaching you all today. Thank you for coming and showing up. And then you can always write me with more questions. You can contact me through thebreathable.com. And in the words of Dr. Alan Freed, breathe well, be well. It is our most essential thing. All right.
Thank you, Robert.
And you're welcome.
Robert.
You're welcome. Hi, Annie. Nice to see your face. I will send the link out a little later this afternoon to the recording, so you'll have that if you need it. And please, if you know somebody who can really be of use to them, you want to pass along the link for the recording, go ahead and be my guest.
And we'll also be getting the slides. I mean,
you'll have a PDF of the slides in your email, and I'll put the PowerPoint of the slides in the Google Drive, so you'll have those more that way.
And then you're going to send out a link for next week's?
Yeah, I just got a copy of the flyer here today, so I'll take a look at that and see if there's yes. The answer will be yes. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you.